There are only 9 meals between mankind and anarchy.
I think it'll start happening pretty quickly now. And we're in it. So like, if you think about what we were building with One Bridge that, went to Project Hamilton, like when we renamed One Bridge Project Hamilton, went to the Fed, went to the TBAC, the Treasury Borrowing Advisory Committee. We presented everything that we did. This is during the last administration. And we encountered, we had multiple meetings. We encountered staffers and people there who were really intrigued by what we did, and yet it was apparent that we were facing, and we were not welcome in the U.S.
This is Eric Peters. He is the CIO of Coinbase Asset Management. Eric speaks about working with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve had a pilot project with the BIS Innovation Hub called Project Hamilton. I was aware of Project Hamilton, but I was unaware that Coinbase was working on Project Hamilton with the Fed.
Did a roundtable with the Federal Reserve. It blew my mind, because in 2011, I was one of those audit the Fed guys running around saying, we need an audit. Now I'm sitting at a roundtable with Mickey and Governor Waller. And it was a great round table. Sergey Nazarov was there, Anatoly from Solana. We got Ilya from Near and Brad from XRP. Some nice people, man. And it was good to see some old friends, some new friends, and make some deals here and there.
The BIS Innovation Hub encouraged central banks to get active with the technology. So the fact that the Fed was meeting with some of the largest participants in the industry tells me that a lot of the earlier projects, like Project Hamilton, are getting close to being rolled out. Now, many of these projects were for the Fed to be one of the nodes on some type of RegTech platform. So imagine a world with tokenized everything, tokenized securities, and the DeFi model takes place, and people are actively investing in random equities and making cross-border payments, and the whole tokenized infrastructure is happening. Well, there would be a node on each ledger to ensure that all of the transactions are on the up and up. They would be one of the KYC AML parts of this. They would be making sure that there's no funny business happening on each ledger. What I find interesting, though, is Charles leaks that maybe there is some deals happening between him and some of the other participants. So, we could see that there's been quite a bit of activity happening with some of the national champions, and it's pretty odds calling it this national champions, but that is in fact what it is.
I think that's one of the big plays for Coinbase is like crypto as a service. I mean, Coinbase is the 800-pound gorilla that is going to supply the infrastructure services to traditional finance as these guys all get on board. Some of them, maybe JP Morgan or maybe Goldman, will build some of their own infrastructure. But I think, Coinbase will be dominant in that space. But you could get some lesser players that, try to do things on their own and just mess it up. I think that would harm the industry, big thefts or people feel insecure with their assets. Those are the things that I kind of think about, whenever, like,
Brian Armstrong recently appeared on a podcast by Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan, if you're unaware, is a podcast host that was a Navy SEAL, but also worked for the CIA. And he gets very upset when people say that he is still working for the agency. But so I'm not going to do that. I don't think I need to. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. But on the podcast, he was talking to Brian Armstrong about the future of tokenization and the future of Coinbase. And one of the things that stuck out to me was that Base is going to be the next iteration of social media. And it's not going to be the next iteration of banking. It's not going to be the next iteration of exchanges or something in the financial sector. Brian Armstrong was adamant that Base is going to be the protocol for social media. But also, I want to point out that Charles Hoskinson was on the same Sean Ryan podcast 1 or 2 episodes right before Brian Armstrong is aired. And you heard Charles, he said that he was one of those end the Fed guys, and all of a sudden everything changed. And now he's not. And also, he was able to broker some deals when he was meeting with the cronies behind stage at the Fed. If you look into WeChat or Alipay, this has been the super app of China, and America has often speculated on some sort of WeChat or Alipay for the United States. And I think Coinbase or Base protocol will be the protocol that this super app sits on. But instead of having the super app being ran by one company, you're going to have Legos plug into each other to create one large super app. The other part of this is Coinbase will become the national champion that spies on us, just like Zuckerberg spied on us.
They're massive numbers. They naturally, as you draw more players into a market, in general, the volatility will decline. Ironically, at times, as you bring leverage into a market, volatility can decline as well until something goes wrong, in which case the volatility explodes. But the dynamics that you described, I think, are in play right now. I still, from my vantage point, I do not think institutions are here in size at all. So, the definition of institution is, can vary quite a bit. So I think when I think of institution, I think of the large pension plans, the large endowments, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, and some of those flows have started for sure. I think when a lot of other people talk about institutions, they talk about hedge funds, large investment funds of different sorts, corporates. So the type of institution that I have spent my career with mostly have still, they haven't even scratched the surface.
Really?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. No, these, as I said, these are the guys that have just they kind of got left behind.
Some of the largest institutions, the retirements, the pensions, the sovereign wealth funds are still on the sidelines. Some of the largest investors in the world are going to FOMO in at the top. Now, that doesn't sound very likely, but that is the dynamic at play. I am expecting manufactured crises.
It's wildly overvalued. You're like, what valuation metric are you using? And you're like, I actually don't have one. So you're like, well, okay, it could be that value. It's fine. I think that the confluence of the different themes right now. So like one of the themes I think is that is going to drive valuation is this flow of 401k money. I think that income inequality is actually a big driver of this because there's so many younger people that don't feel like they can make it. And they have guys like Michael Saylor or Tom Lee talking about 100X and like, hell, man, I could put my money into some, crappy stock index fund and earn, on average 7% a year, or I could make 100X. Like I'm going to put a bunch of money in that. So I think like income inequality and some of the frictions between youth and older people that have a lot of money are going to drive flows into this. I think the use cases are going to obviously.
Every bull market, I get family, I get friends asking me about crypto, and they ask me how to invest. And I have to assume that everybody that I get into crypto, they're getting people into crypto, and it keeps expanding. As people realize gains from crypto and showcase wealth to others, this is confidence that is accelerating crypto adoption. People see this and they start to say, well, maybe crypto's not a scam.
It is possible that crypto, to a degree, becomes part of some new monetary standard. Not that Bitcoin takes over the dollar, but that it's possible. You see the U.S. talking about a strategic digital asset or Bitcoin reserve. And there certainly are countries around the world in the Middle East who've made large investments that are probably bigger than the ones that they've disclosed. And so it's possible that there even do become some monetary standards that are at least in part backed by crypto, just like they might be backed by gold or other commodities. And so there could be narratives out there. I think there probably will be narratives that will ultimately suck some of these big players in at higher prices.
We are witnessing a paradigm shift, and governments are continuing to destroy and debase the currency that gives them power. And as they erode their own power and shoot themselves in the foot, we will see new monetary systems take hold. And these new monetary systems need to be digitally based. They need to be interoperable with other technologies such as artificial intelligence.
Drive flows. But like AI is another, like, I think we're starting to see this convergence between crypto, which doesn't have great valuation models, and AI, which ignites people's imagination in wild ways. You're seeing this convergence where AI is going to make it so that we don't know what's real and what's unreal. And crypto can help solve that. Like you'll be able to authenticate video and everything using blockchain. So I think you'll also see this AI agentic economy where you're going to have AI agents transacting with one another, and they need to move money and do all sorts of financial services between them at light speed that JP Morgan or these other firms are not going to be able to do. So
everybody assumes that we are reliving socialism, or we're reliving fascism or communism. But the reality is that we're moving into a very different world, a world that's going to be governed by technology. Artificial intelligence will likely be the gatekeepers that rule everything in this digital world, that blur the line between reality and the digital world where AI is governing this world. Likely, the things that we need to worry about are more so the sci-fi stories, the George Orwell stories, or Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
What really moves markets is fear and greed, is people's imaginations running wild on the upside, but also on the downside. And so, things that destroy people's faith in these underlying assets. So it could be a hack. It could be, something with encryption that goes wrong due to quantum computing. But like when we've really looked into that, I don't think that's going to be a real issue. So it's like, but it's the type of thing that it could scare people. But I'm not worried about at this stage in the cycle. I'm not worried about like catastrophic downside. I'm not. I mean, there's downside, of course. There's always like 30% downside in any market. You're crazy if you think there isn't. But I'm not worried about the catastrophic downside right now.
Eric.
So recently, JD Vance told the UK to back off of Apple, and they need to respect America's privacy. And the UK just bowed down and did exactly what JD Vance wanted. Well, there's also a ton of these homegrown quantum computing companies that are now able to launch their own quantum computers with national supply chains. And this just recently happened in Japan. Now, the idea that the UK was going to back off of Apple, the UK was trying to put a backdoor into encryption, right? This was their purpose, was trying to inject backdoors into encryption so that the government can get into anybody's account at any time for whatever reason. And the United States has made this position in the past with some of its big tech giants as well. So it looks very likely to me that the US government has a quantum computer, and this is why a lot of the quantum computing stocks have been hitting all-time high after all-time high, but also a reason why there is a push towards crypto. If they could just pick any wallet and break into any wallet at will, Well, that would explain a lot. Plus, if you see any of the ransomware attacks, the funds are recovered almost instantaneously. It wouldn't be a privacy concern. You wouldn't care about the privacy protocols. And, a lot of the government's posturing would align with having the technology. And if they don't have the technology for a quantum computer, it is accelerating to a point where it's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 years. The official timeline is in 2 years. So it would not surprise me to find out that they already have it. But even if they don't, by the time that they actually put all this into effect, they'll have one at that time. We just recently saw DARPA has partnered with some of the largest tech firms in the quantum computing space, but also the US government bought 10% of Intel, which is specific for quantum computers. The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you enjoy content like this, please consider joining my Patreon or my Ghost site.